Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Jumpstart. My name is Jason Meyer, and this morning we've got three on deck. We've got two sunset paintings, and we have some a lilac charcoal sketch, which I was very excited about. Yesterday at the beginning of office hours, Susan and Shakti and I were going through some lilac paintings, their lilac paintings. And we talked about a new way to start. After you have the basics, a new way, a little freer way, I think a more beautiful way in many cases to start. But it usually takes a little bit of experience before you're ready for that. So I was thrilled to see that she went back and did some charcoal drawings, initiating the process like she did with that looser start and going through. So we're going to talk about that. So Shakti charcoal, and then Miss Sue in Cambria's got sunset painting we're going to look at. And then I'm doing the sunset painting along with you guys, and I've had a couple of sittings at mine. So we're going to put mine in Procreate too, and I'll show you guys how rough it can be. But it's all good, because the rougher you are, if you understand it, then the better the finished product is, your final painting. All right, so with that being said, Miss Cindy's there in the background taking care of everything and everybody all the time. I do not know how she does it, but I am glad she does. So why don't we head on over and we'll get started with Miss Sue this morning. Miss Sue. All right, so how about a little do-si-do? A little do-si-do, and we're ready to go. Let's see, I'll put this guy down here. Out of the way. So we've got a lot of really good things happening here, Sue. A lot of really good things happening here. So let's talk about some of the things that we've talked about in the for like the concept of this painting, and then take a look at what we have, okay? So let's just start with one of our ideas. We talked about how, as we divide the canvas, right, horizontally, meaning this way as opposed to this way. So as we divide the canvas horizontally, you know, what do we have? And we talked about having very distinctive zones, right? Like zone, we could call this zone 1, call this zone 2, we'd call this zone 3, and zone 4 up here. And we talked about how we wanted each of these zones to have their own flavor. Okay? For zone 1, it'd be a silhouette. Right? Zone 2 would be quiet, except for some pretty intense boom. Right? So our light was going to have a particular shape and a particular style right about this point. And it was going to be opposed by all the light and stuff right here. Okay? So one of the ways we could look at this is that we had a vertical on the water, and then have more of a horizontal this direction, with a little bit more diagonal and kind of just more chaotic up there. So with that in mind, what's another way we could look at this? Right? We've got no light with our silhouette in zone 1. We've got like a piercing light in zone 2. We have an enveloping light in zone 3. And then we have a scattering light in zone 4. Does that make sense? So I'm going through this a couple of times because, again, we want this to be foremost in our mind as we build these things. Is, do I have each of those zones separated enough? Do I have each of those zones separated enough? And so let's take a look. Let's take a look. So when we look at this in black and white, can you clearly differentiate all of the different zones? You know, oops. Zone 1 here. Yeah, we'd say a yes to that. Zone 2. Say yes again. Zone 3. Yeah. Here I think we could go a little more separation between zone 3 and zone 4. Okay? And it'll help even more if we make this a little more piercing. Right? It wasn't a complete hard edge, but it was relatively hard edge through here. And again, I want to think about that as something different than that. And that. And by so keeping that light, again, you don't want to do that. It'll probably be, you know, something more like that coming through there. But let's think about this as a little bit more of a piercing light. And like I said, an enveloping light here. And a scattering light near the top there. Okay, so how might we execute that? Oh my gosh. Somebody is not layering up. Somebody's not layering up. Should be like brushing your teeth in the morning. It's just something you do. It's just something you do. All right. There we go. So what might we do for that? Well, as I said, what if we made the light on the water just a little more, you know what I mean, piercing, kind of hard edged. Don't let it and then I can cut in with this other side here. Oops, that's a bit dark. That's a bit dark, Jason. Everybody's a critic this morning. Everybody's a critic. All right, let's see. Okay, you see that difference? And again, one of the big reasons for that is because then that's more different. What I did was more different than that sun and that area. And what you did was a little bit too similar. Do you see that? Okay, so a little more separation like that. And then the other thing we might talk about is it's really important that that ocean feels heavy. Right? That's all that water, that's some weight, man. Oof, that's some weight. And that these clouds feel like they're floating. So, how might we do that? How might we do that? Welcome, everybody in. Good morning, Susan. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Miss Shakti, how are you this morning? Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Okay, well, I think if we darken the water a little bit, I think that's going to help. And it will also help separate the land and the water from the sky. Okay. Now, the question is almost, well, how much separation? And that is a great question. So, what if we did this? And remember, this is water, so this water needs to feel wet. So I'm not going to paint this flat over what we have here, but I'm going to let little pieces glimmer through there. Okay. And let's take some of this in the background, quiet that down. Okay, so I think that helps. And I got the water still a little busy, so maybe I'll do another layer on that. Right, want it quiet. Because we don't really want to be focusing on the water. This is a sunset. Right? The reflection on the water is like the path to get to the restaurant, to get to the show. We don't want not the show itself. Okay, so let's quiet that down a little bit. Okay, now I know my horizon's not straight, but we're on a time limit. We gotta do this fast, so give me a little bit of grace there. Give me just a little. All right. Okay, so we've got our first two zones clearly separated, and then that water's a little bit heavier. And with the water like that, what that does is it gives us room then for our sky to go just a bit, not our sky, excuse me, our clouds to go just a bit lighter. Do you see that? So that's going to be real easy. It's going to be very easy to slide that in there. And at the same time, it'll be plenty strong enough to hold our glowing light. Okay, so if that's the sun zone, again, that's zone 3. So zone 1 is different than zone 2. Zone 2 is different than zone 3, and zone 3 is different than zone 1 so far. Okay, and notice it's really mostly just with the shapes at this point. How each shapes in each zone is quite unique and different. Yet it's related to the other zones. Okay, and then as we come forward, get a little bit darker with these upper clouds. And since that sun and the reflection on the water is a little waiting on this one side, I want to take this side of the sky out so that this part of the sky over here has a chance to do what it wants and needs to do. Okay? All right, I'll give you that's pretty weak so far. That's pretty, all right. That's pretty weak so far. Okay, but something like that. Something like that. And then what I would do is I would come back into the center. We'd come to the center here. And wherever that sun is, I'm going to drop down a bit. I'm going to drop down a bit. Is that enough? See, that's not even enough. That's not enough of a drop. All right, I think this will work. So you see this is darker than the sun. And then what I like to do here is I like to, again, to make it different than the water, make this a little bit more horizontal. Then what are we going to do with glow? Well, a little bit darker as we come out. And again. Again, Daddy, again. Yep. Again and again and again and again. And then that should let us step right into those clouds. Okay, and so now we're getting a little bit of a glow there. Again, if I could take a little bit of that value and the outside, and that'll make that water appear to glow. Again, because glowing is just a gradating off in value as we go back. And then that sky up above would have to be a little bit darker, wouldn't it? Above these clouds. I know that might appear a little bit hard to see right now, but a sunset, the sunset's the mood of these values being close. Right? But if we keep it relatively flat, then that'll be stronger, so we can have them close and keep it flat, and they'll still separate. The values will still separate from one another. All right, so now we've, I think, got our zones a little bit better. And then the last thing would be to put the underlighting on the clouds. So what that means is where that cloud starts, where are we at? We're at 45 there. The cloud starts here, so this is cloud, and this is sky. So cloud is foreground, sky is background. So what do we know about foreground and background? Well, the foreground, the dark's got to be darker than the background. And the light's got to be lighter than the background. Okay, so if we go here, then whatever that is, I can make it lighter. And it doesn't have to be lighter everywhere. It just has to be lighter right there. And I don't think that's light enough. What is going on here? Come back here. So this is where we are. We drop that down to 30. Oh, going the wrong way. Oh my goodness. Lighter, not darker. There we go. Right, so that would be the bottom of these clouds. And the top of these, and we want to keep them thin because they're way back there. And then as we come up here, it's not as light, and it's a bit bigger. So it'll look something like that. Does that make sense? And then what's the last thing we've got to tend to here? Well, edges. So the interior edges here need to be soft. Right? So because that light there's the finish, and we've got to tie that back to the middle. It's one way to think about it. Or we can think about it as this is an interior edge, and interior edges, as we go from light to dark on form, is soft. So again, for time, I'm not going to do all this. But you see how that softens right up? Okay, so what did we talk about? What did we talk about? Well, we talked about our 4 zones: the silhouette of the beach, the water, the clouds. Well, we did zone 1's the beach, zone 2's the water, and then zone 3 is the sunburst, and then zone 4 is up above. And so we talked about how we could start really differentiating those zones. And so we really wanted to show the difference between this light. So for one, it's a pretty strong vertical, and the light of the sun. And then we also wanted to separate the value of the water from the value of the sky a little bit more. So we went there. Okay. Then as we start going to our sunburst and our upper clouds, and then we simply lit the clouds from the sun. Right? And then the last thing is you'd have some sunburst going there. And I would keep those sunburst, personally, probably up here in the sky, and not down where the sun's glowing. Again, this can be a differentiate. This can help differentiate some of that. All right, I hope that helps, Sue. I hope that helps. Man, you got an earful this morning. You got an earful, nearly half an hour. Oof. Oof, oof, oof. Okay, so there's our zones we were talking about. And then we got to work. Trying to make it happen. All right, my friend. You're knocking them dead, so keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Good job. Good job. All right, let's come to a charcoal drawing, Miss Shakti. So we had a great little talk yesterday morning. And we talked about kind of a different way to start. Now, I don't know if this is just cropped in the photo, or maybe you didn't think about it. Or maybe you did. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Background. Let's go ahead and make our background. Just go ahead and make it like, well, that'll work. That will work. So if this is the canvas, right? So I really want to think in terms of the canvas, and if it's not the canvas, then I want to decide what the proportions are and work within that, right? So whatever you're working with, you want to make sure that you're placing what we're about to do in those boundaries in that format, okay? So in this case, the format's just going to be the whole sheet of paper that we have here, or the whole gray screen. And I can think about the canvas like this. And the whole idea is to have balanced asymmetry. Okay, so that means you're going to kind of avoid having something just dead center. And now I mean that a little different than you think I mean it, but we're going to leave that right there for right now. And as we get more advanced, you'll understand what I actually mean by that. Right now, you're thinking, oh, don't place an object right there. And okay, we can start with that, but that's not really what it is. It's literally don't put a piece of light or something that they're going to focus on right there with that and that, where it's all balanced. But would it be possible to have a piece of light right here? Is there anything wrong with that? No, that's fine. So it doesn't mean that nothing can be there in the center. It just means you don't want to have something dead center and then no movement off of it. You usually don't want to have anything dead center, but all right. Then what that also means is if we have lilacs, and our lilacs were basically a triangle, right? We were doing something like that. Right? Was that more or less the shape of our lilacs that we decided? So then if I see that, what I want to avoid is the same amount of room between there and there and there and there. Why? Because I'm centering the thing. I want to avoid the same amount of room, say between here and here. Does that make sense? I want to avoid this in this quadrant being equal to this quadrant being equal to this quadrant being equal to that quadrant. So other than this being equal and that being a little equal, we're not too far from the idea now, because it matters where on the canvas you put this, and that's why I want you to determine what your format is and work within that format. Then, so the finish is the most important. If I decided I want to finish right here, with a little boop up there maybe, and that we were gonna go there, and then what were we gonna do from there? Well, we were gonna drip down from all of this after there was a rest and a big deal up here. And then I'm going to come in a little bit and put my quieter marks right over there. So what do I got? What's we got? Okay, pretty good, but does anybody see anything wrong with this at this point? What do you guys see? I want you to look at this and tell me, does this work? Can we stop here, or do we got some redesign we've got to do? Does anybody got the diagonal? But it's a straight. Do you see that it's a going on? Oh, it's a straight. It's a straight, yep. And the bottom, not quite lined up, but it's getting close. It's getting close. That's right too. So that's good. Good, 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 good. So Susan says diagonal, and Shakti says bottoms lined up. So that's exactly how you guys want to do. So what was my... I kind of wanted that for this side, didn't I? So how do I get that? And this is where things start kind of oofing. So let's take our eraser. Let's take our eraser and we'll push that back a little bit. We're going to have a little break between here and a little break there. You guys remember the direction we wanted this to go in? And we wanted it to come up this way a bit, didn't we? Okay. Push out a little bit there. Maybe cut in a bit there. Okay, let's see, what else? What else we gotta do? What else we got to do? I feel like... I feel a little better. That's starting to feel a little bit better to me. It's feeling a little bit better to me. Now, the question would be, is this too much on the canvas? Is this too much? Well, at full power it would be. At full power it would be, but what if we... turned these first ones down just a little bit? What if we turned them down just a little bit? And I believe we were going to have a bunch back here that were just a little bit quieter. Kind of back in the background. Was that right? Was that right? And then we were going to let these turn a little bit softer. How about now? Does that feel better to you guys? All right, so that's how I would start, but where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? Well, we've got to separate our shadow, our dark, our number 4 from our number 3 background, don't we? So why don't we level up? And let's go for our dark. Okay, so we can lay these across the table. Right, so that we can get our first zone and make sure these aren't lined up. Those are some of the things I'm checking. Okay, so that could be table, and then, you know, maybe that's from the larger bouquet. So maybe the back of the table is way back there. And then we've also got to hold some of this stuff, don't we? So, you know, this is going to be important. Let's see, and we needed something here, didn't we? Right, to keep them from just dropping straight down to the finish. We've got to block their way a little bit. If we don't block their way, they'll just finish. So we gotta go, no, you know what? You should probably take the scenic route. Should probably take the scenic route. Okay, so I would start something like that. What do you guys think we got to do next? Is this enough, Shakti and Susie? Excuse me, Shakti and Susan? Would you guys know where to go from here? And once you do know, you don't really need to do much more than this. You feel like it's floating? Yeah. It looks like the lilacs are floating a little bit, but how are we going to fix that? Well, we'd have to make sure these interior edges are soft enough. Right, on the inside edges. That's what makes them interior. And then it would just be making sure that then these cast shadows belong to these lilacs. And how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to tie them together by showing the airiness and seeing through these lilacs. Right, and even up in here. Okay, and then that'll take care of some of the floatiness. And the other thing that'll take care of the floatiness is when some of these become or read more like leaves, then again, the image is just going to boom really quick. Let's see. It's floating. Yes, I see where to go. But first I have to... Don't cry. Don't cry. Yeah, take away the flatness of the background. Yeah, exactly. Soften those edges. You know, it's hard. One of the things that we don't want here, or we want to be careful with, is the big division right here. Because that's an interior edge. Right? So that's part of it too. And remember, some of what we're going to do is we're going to be taking like some of our lilac color and showing some leaves and light. Two. And then look how that expands and changes the shape. Look, that single leaf and light completely transformed the nature of this whole thing. So how much do you need? How much do you need? All right, guys, I think I'm going to leave that right there and let you play with it. And again, what am I really doing here? What are we really up to? Well, we wanted to build that gesture. Did we? Maybe. Maybe, right? This is still feeling a little flat to me, to be honest. A little straight. So, might have to take this part right, because then that would, right, we want them to come out all the way over there. And then I like that little bit more rounded before we come in for this part. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so brass tacks. Number 4. Number 3, number 3, number 3. Notice we start with our lilacs pretty close to number 3. Right? So maybe this would be like 2.85. So we get a quiet start. And then we want this start to build to a big note. And then we want it to fall off and drizzle, drizzle, drizzle until we start to build here to our brightest note. Okay, and so you'll start showing that. But again, we're working big to small, big to small. So the idea here was to show you guys with our new start how we get into this. Now, if this was completely charcoal, what might I do? This was just charcoal. Not a very big brush. It's not very big. But anyway, I would, let's see. All right, we're gonna watch this get built, and then we're gonna merge it together and turn it down. So not too bad, huh? Do you see that movement so far from a straight line? So far from a straight line. It's like a meandering creek or something. Could you imagine this? A creek, and we're only diagramming where the water puddles, not where it just runs. Nice and organic. And then we want to reinforce that with the shadow. Why does it look worse with the shadow? Why does all of a sudden it look worse with the shadow? Look at that harsh edge. Look at that. These are okay. That's going to be okay. But the harshness on the inside is what kills that feeling. You see that harshness isn't there. Right? Feels a little softer. So we'll have to soften that up. But there you go. There it is, there it is, there it is. All right. So, last but not least, and I'm hoping this will help Sue out as well. We had this dog come in, and I thought I should just tear it to pieces. Tear it to pieces. And why do I feel so liberal just to tear it to pieces? Well, because this is mine. This is mine. What's wrong with this thing? What's wrong with this thing? So this goes hand in hand with the last charcoal drawing we saw and talked about. But what happens is this is on a much more subtle level. And it may be hard to see here, but in person, it doesn't feel balanced. It feels like we're going to fall off. Feels like we're going to fall off. So where could that be coming from? Where could that be coming from? Anybody want to take a strong guess here? Your turn to critique the teacher. Your turn to critique the teacher. Does anything seem out of whack to you guys? What do you think? Now again, this is the middle of the process, so the values aren't totally honed in or anything else. So we're not talking finish, but there's something really wrong here. We got to figure out what it is. So let's see, does the left corner need to close in a bit? There's a lot of equal orange in the sky. It's funny you say that, Susan. The orange is very unequal, believe it or not. But you're reading it as equal. And so you'll have to see the difference there. And I think some of that equalness is coming from our clouds rather than the sky. So Susan thought there's a lot of equal orange there. So that's something to investigate. But again, I think it's other things making you see that. And then Shakti says, does the left corner need to be closed up a bit? Maybe. But let me show you what I was seeing. When I've got this in the studio and I'm looking at it, it feels like this side of the painting just falls off. This edge doesn't feel stable. So where is that coming from? Where in the world is that coming from? We're running out of time, so we're gonna... Could that possibly do it? Well, maybe, but it feels stronger than that. Oh, well then that makes that movement stronger, doesn't it? Oh, ouch. Can you guys see that? Subtle. But again, if you don't know that this is stability, right, and that's division, you may never find that. But I didn't see any of that. But I felt that this was sinking. I felt it. And then from that feeling, I've got to find out technically what do I have to do. Well, shore up some of that. Do I have to go and fix every one of that? No. But that would help a bunch. That would help a bunch. And then just, putting something else right up here. And we'd probably, that would be enough. So as I go back again and I work on this, I'm going to think about that. This is feeling heavy to me too. It's feeling heavy. Right? Because part of this is we've got to have land. It's got to feel solid like land. We can step in it. We can step on it. We can build on it. This needs to feel like water. We're going to sink into it. This needs to feel like water or vapor, clouds. It's got to be lighter than the water. Not to mention those clouds. Okay, so as I push mine forward, those will be the things that I'm looking for. And there's a bunch of other little subtle things that we'll be going for, but those will be the main things is keeping the drop from there, and then just quietly adjusting the measure of these values. Right? Starting that for me seems to be my problem spot. So as I adjust those values, I will probably start right in here, trying to get this relationship, meaning not just that, I'm looking at that to 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 that, right? I'm looking at this whole run because that whole run affects the look of that right there. Right? So it's not that I'm going to go in and try to mix up a correct purple and just set it in there and walk away. That's not how that works. I've got to get it in harmony with an entire run, which means I need to mix more than one color. Okay. I don't see it. What did you not see? What did you not see, Susan? The falling off? Did not quite see what you didn't see. Sorry, I don't know when that came in. That line? That eye? Well, I talked about the falling off. Okay. So it's not, it doesn't seem, let's see if we can, as far as it's going to let me go. It's very subtle, but do you feel that? Do you feel it? You see, all those things are just off horizontal. Just off. And the repetition of all of it, what it does is it just sinks down. The fix for it would be, well, I would probably straighten that out. I'll probably break this up like that, more straight across. You guys got maybe a little floater here and then just a little more strength there. Something like that. Ah, I see. Yeah, but again, it's the same. It is subtle. This is subtle, but it's the same thing I'm doing with you guys, right? It's no different. These angles could be off, right? That would be enough to kind of set things going, right? By the way, do you see that even though I have, we're going to end on this. We've got that. We've got that. We've got that. Why doesn't that feel too equal? Well, because look, it shows up much more up here than it does right there. Do you see? So even though it's the same thing, there's a completely different impact from those rays than from these rays. And that's a sort of asymmetrical balance that we're talking about. The same but different. Completely the same but completely different. The same but different. Compare and relate, compare and relate, compare and relate. How is it the same? How does it differ? How is it the same? How does it differ? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention today. I hope you got a ton out of it. That's the whole reason we're here. Make sure that we equip you guys to get some more beauty out there in the world. Be a little bit more beautiful. Not that you aren't so beautiful already, but we could all probably stand to be a little bit more. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love to all of you, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, everybody. One more morning jump start in the morning. So if you haven't got your work in, get it then. And then Friday will be our last day of the class for the month. So it'll be more of kind of a celebration and looking at what everybody's done. All right, and then tonight is Sketch Club. So we will see you guys again soon. In the meantime, sketch, paint, paint, sketch, sketch, paint, paint, paint. Bye, everybody.